Sandra Bullock's journey in love has been anything but smooth. It all began when she fell hard for Jesse James, a television personality known for his bad boy image. Many people were surprised by her choice, especially since Keanu Reeves seemed like a more suitable match. Reflecting on it, Sandra once said, "I think about how sweet Keanu Reeves was." Sandra and Jesse eventually got married, but their relationship took an unexpected turn. Years after their divorce, Sandra revealed that another man was truly the love of her life. Was it Keanu Reeves or someone else entirely? Let's explore who this mystery man is, the one Sandra, at 59, called the love of her life, and who also protected her from stalkers. Sandra Bullock has faced several terrifying incidents with stalkers breaking into her home. On 3 separate occasions, she had to hide and call 911 for help. But during these dark times, she found comfort in a man who stood by her and protected her, Jesse James, a well-known television personality. Jesse helped Sandra cope with the trauma caused by these stalkers, and this support naturally deepened their love for each other. Sandra and Jesse seemed like an unlikely couple. Sandra was a glamorous Hollywood actress, while Jesse was an automotive expert and host of the TV show Monster Garage. Despite coming from different worlds, fate brought them together, and Jesse found a way to bridge the gap between their lives. Sandra Bullock's connection with Jesse James began with her son, Lou, and his love for motorcycles. In 2003, Lou was eager to visit the West Coast Choppers headquarters in Long Beach, which was owned by Jesse James. After some convincing from Lou, Sandra agreed to take him there. When they arrived, Jesse welcomed them and gave a private tour of the place. While Lou was fully engaged and enjoying the experience, Jesse was captivated by Sandra. He was instantly attracted to her and couldn't shake off the feeling. We know this because after the tour ended, Jesse called Sandra's office later that same day. James didn't waste any time pursuing the woman he was instantly drawn to. After meeting Sandra, he knew he had to act quickly before someone else captured her heart. However, Sandra didn't share his feelings. To her, Jesse was just a tour guide who was into motorcycles and cars, and she felt no attraction to him. When Jesse called her office later that day, Sandra told her assistant, "Don't give him my number. Just give him my email and I'll politely decline. I'm not interested." This was her usual way of dealing with men who were too eager. But James wasn't easily discouraged. Despite her initial reluctance, James managed not only to get her number, but also convinced her to marry him. Their worlds, so different from each other, came together in a surprising way. Yet something went wrong in their relationship, leading Sandra to later admit that another man, not James, was the true love of her life. What could have happened? Let's explore the story. Marrying a Hollywood star like Sandra Bullock isn't easy. After repeatedly trying to call her with no success, most men would have given up. But not Jesse James. Realizing that just calling would get him nowhere, and might even land him in the friend zone, he decided to change his approach. When she rejected his calls again, he came up with a clever idea to stand out from other suitors, a virtual game of 20 questions. And it worked. They started bonding over the game, which soon led to deeper conversations. Before long, Sandra found herself drawn to this automotive TV personality, known to many as a bad boy. At first, Sandra expected him to talk about motorcycles and cars, but James had a different plan. He won her over by taking a unique approach, focusing on her passions, their future, and then himself. He did this through what Sandra called a courtship of letters. Despite the distance, their connection grew strong, showing that staying far apart wouldn't be a barrier to their blossoming love. Sandra Bullock and Jesse James exchanged letters that were filled with deep emotions and heartfelt thoughts. Reflecting on how Jesse won her over, Sandra shared, "It wasn't something I wanted, needed, or was looking for, but he was stronger than me spiritually and in terms of patience. I was fortunate that he taught me so much." The couple seemed like a perfect match, but when Jesse was asked about his first impression of Sandra, his answer was surprising. He admitted, "I thought she was a typical Hollywood snob and didn't think much of it. But after talking to her for a few minutes, it felt like getting hit in the head with a brick. She was nothing like I expected. In 2005, Sandra and Jesse had a private wedding at a ranch in the San Ynez Valley, with only their closest friends and family present. This marked the beginning of a strong bond, and Sandra would soon rely on Jesse for support when a suspicious person broke into her home. Sandra Bullock has faced the terrifying experience of stalkers breaking into her home not once, but 3 times. These intruders were obsessed fans who took their admiration to dangerous extremes. During one of these incidents, her husband, Jesse James, stood by her as a true protector when a violent stalker broke in for the first time. Even though Jesse's presence was reassuring, it didn't erase the fear Sandra felt when that first intruder entered her home. The ordeal began at 6:30 a.m. on June 8, 2014, in her Los Angeles home. Sandra was jolted awake by the sound of someone breaking in. In a moment of panic, she quietly moved to her closet, where she locked herself behind a safe door. Despite her fear, she acted swiftly, driven by adrenaline and a strong instinct to survive. Hiding in her closet, Sandra Bullock made a desperate call to 911. When the call connected, she whispered that someone had broken into her home and that she was hiding in a closet. The operator asked if she was still inside the house, and Sandra frantically replied, "Yes." She added that she saw the intruder head toward the attic. When asked if the person was a man or a woman, Sandra quickly said she believed it was a man. The operator then asked for her name, and she gave it in a shaky voice. Sandra stayed hidden, avoiding detection by the stalker for 15 agonizing minutes, trembling with fear about what might happen if she was found. She kept the line open, silently praying that the police would arrive in time to catch the intruder. Every second felt like an eternity. Finally, the operator informed her, "There's an officer pulling up now. Do not go out there. They're entering. They've got an open door, so they're coming in." Sandra replied that she could hear them and thanked the 911 operator for his help. The intruder was soon caught and identified as Joshua James Corbett, an obsessed fan struggling with mental health issues. As the police escorted him out of her home, the intruder pleaded with Sandra, saying, "I'm sorry, please don't press charges." Officers surrounded the area as reporters and curious bystanders gathered to learn what had happened. Sandra later secured a restraining order against her frightening stalker. A few years later, in 2014, the news spread quickly that Joshua James Corbett, the man who had broken into Sandra's home, had taken his own life in his Los Angeles County residence after a prolonged standoff with the police. Joshua, 42 years old, was found dead in his La Crescenta home. The SWAT team, determined to understand the circumstances of his death, entered his house and discovered Joshua's body, lifeless from self-inflicted wounds made with a sharp object. There was no sign of gunfire at the scene. Meanwhile, Sandra was still grappling with the trauma caused by the intruder's invasion of her home. She couldn't shake the chilling thought of how close she had come to a potentially fatal encounter. Reflecting on the incident later, Sandra remarked, "It was the one night that Louis wasn't with me." Louis was her son, and the thought that he had been spared the terror of that night filled her with deep gratitude. If anything terrible had happened, she was relieved that it would have been her rather than her beloved son, Louis. Sandra couldn't help but dwell on the unsettling thought that her stalker had broken into her home on the one night her son wasn't there. Was it just a coincidence? Why wasn't Louis home that evening? These questions lingered in her mind, casting a dark shadow over her thoughts. Despite the comfort her husband, Jesse James, provided, Sandra often found herself smiling when she remembered the kind words Keanu Reeves had spoken about her just hours before the break-in, a pairing that many fans had fantasized about. Keanu Reeves had always been a steadfast friend to Sandra Bullock, and fans frequently hoped to see them together as a couple. Just before the terrifying incident, Keanu had praised Sandra, telling her, "Sandra, you are one of a kind." Hearing such a compliment from Keanu was enough to make any woman feel cherished, and Sandra basked in those words until she was jolted awake by the intruder. Later, at an award show, Keanu once again expressed his admiration for Sandra, leaving her blushing as he shared heartfelt anecdotes. Rushing to the stage, Keanu greeted the audience and then said, "Sandra, your heart, your soul, your light, your talent that you share with all of us is amazing, wonderful, and extraordinary." He ended his speech with, "You are one of a kind." It was a moment that Sandra and fans of both stars would remember for a long time. Ever since Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves starred together in the hit movie Speed, their on-screen chemistry was undeniable. Fans noticed it right away, often pairing them together as the ideal Hollywood couple. Sandra later admitted that she had always had a crush on Keanu, a feeling she had kept to herself for years. At one point, Keanu even kissed Sandra behind the scenes of another film they worked on. This fueled speculation that there was something more between them, and fans couldn't help but imagine what a perfect couple they would have made. However, Keanu never expressed his feelings to Sandra, and she was too captivated by him to make the first move. Instead, they remained friends, kept their feelings hidden, and eventually married other people. But as the saying goes, the truth can only be delayed, not denied. This came to light during the Ellen DeGeneres show, where both Sandra and Keanu finally admitted to having had crushes on each other. The revelations came at different times, leaving everyone surprised. Ellen first got Sandra to confess her feelings for Keanu during an interview. Later, when Keanu appeared on the show, Ellen brought up Sandra's admission to see how he would respond. While sitting with Keanu Reeves, Ellen started the conversation by saying, "So Sandra Bullock, that was her first big break with you," referring to their movie Speed. Keanu agreed. Ellen then continued, "And I asked her because everyone had a crush on you if she did too, and this is what she said." Ellen played a clip of Sandra on her show, where she confessed her feelings about Keanu. In the video, Sandra said, "I understood how sweet and handsome Keanu Reeves was." The audience burst into laughter, encouraging Sandra to keep going. She added, "It was hard to stay serious because he'd look at me and I'd just..." She then giggled like a shy teenager, which made the audience laugh even more. Ellen then asked Sandra directly, "Did you two ever get together? Did you date him?" Sandra replied that they never dated, and a surprised Ellen asked, "Really?" Sandra jokingly said, "There must have been something about me he didn't like." She laughed, and the audience and Ellen joined in. Ellen quickly responded, "No, that's not true." But Sandra insisted, "I think it is." Ellen disagreed, suggesting, "He was probably intimidated." But Sandra laughed that off, saying, "Not at all. There's nothing intimidating about me." Ellen didn't give up and said maybe Sandra's personality was intimidating. Sandra explained, "I think we stayed friends for so long because we didn't..." She then made a funny kissing face, which brought more laughter from the audience. Ellen tried to imitate her, asking, "Is that how you do it?" Sandra responded, "That's how I do it." Ellen then joked, "Maybe that's why he didn't want to be with you." The whole audience, including Sandra, burst into laughter. Ellen's interview with Sandra Bullock happened in 2018, and a year later she showed the clip to Keanu Reeves. He watched it with a smile, clearly amused by the whole situation. Ellen then asked him, "Did you know she had a crush on you?" Keanu shook his head, indicating he had no idea. Just as Ellen was about to ask another question, Keanu surprised everyone by saying, "She didn't know I had a crush on her either." His honest admission earned applause from the audience. Ellen was just as shocked as when she first heard Sandra's confession. She couldn't believe they both had feelings for each other but never acted on them. "I can't believe you both had crushes on each other and didn't do anything," she said, still in disbelief. Keanu explained, "We were working." Ellen quickly responded, "I know, but other people who work together still find time for romance." Keanu didn't give a clear answer but made some funny gestures, hinting that he might have had an on-set romance before. The audience found this amusing, and Ellen caught on, saying, "It sounds like yes." Keanu agreed with a sheepish grin. Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves were the couple that never happened. They worked together on movies like Speed and shared great on-screen chemistry, but they never confessed their feelings to each other. Instead, Sandra ended up marrying Jesse James, while Keanu moved on with his own relationships. Sandra Bullock's marriage to Jesse James ended in heartbreak. They were married for nearly 5 years and seemed happy, But everything changed suddenly. Just 2 weeks after Sandra won an Oscar, Jesse cheated on her. This betrayal shook Sandra deeply and left her struggling emotionally. She had trusted Jesse as her first true love after becoming famous, only for him to cause her so much pain. Meanwhile, Keanu Reeves never turned their friendship into a relationship, and now Sandra had to deal with Jesse's betrayal. These events made Sandra doubt herself and question her worth. She withdrew and focused on raising her adopted son, Louis, who became her source of hope. Sandra said that adopting Louis felt like the right path for her. After her divorce from Jesse, she concentrated on quietly raising her son and rebuilding her life. Sandra Bullock remembered a time when Louis had a severe seizure, and she feared he might not survive. Seizures like this are rare in young children and can have serious consequences. Sandra described the experience, saying, "You wake up and feel panicked all day. You find yourself checking on him late at night, thinking, is he still here?" Sandra had hoped to spend her life with Jesse James, but now she had to raise Louis alone. Despite praising Jesse publicly and showing him affection, their relationship fell apart. After news of Jesse's affair became public, more women came forward, claiming they also had relationships with him while he was married to Sandra. The revelations about Jesse's infidelity were overwhelming for Sandra and the public. She kept a low profile during the divorce, even as she achieved great success in her career, winning an Academy Award for The Blind Side. Her quiet strength during this tough time highlighted her resilience and marked the end of her dreams of growing old with Jesse. While dealing with her divorce, Sandra Bullock faced another scary situation. An intruder broke into her house again and left a handwritten note that said, "I will forever be thinking of you and Louis, my son, as you are my wife by law." The note seemed to be from her ex-husband Jesse James, suggesting he might be feeling regret. But was he really sorry? One might expect Jesse James to feel guilty for embarrassing Sandra by cheating on her. However, he didn't seem to think he had done anything wrong. After their messy divorce, he went to rehab to address his behavior, but that was the extent of his efforts. In his first interview after rehab, when asked why he threw away his perfect life and wife, Jesse said, "I don't know. During all of it, I knew it was terrible and felt horrible. I knew I would get caught eventually. I think I wanted to get caught. It was like I was trying to sabotage my own life." After his interview, Jesse James closed his West Coast Choppers business in California and moved to Austin, Texas, with his 3 children from other relationships. He admitted he hadn't seen Louis since his divorce from Sandra. A few months later, he told the Daily Mail that he had cheated on Sandra, apologized, and took responsibility. But he also said, "In general, both men and women cheat on their partners. It's part of life." James tried to use this as an excuse for his behavior, which angered many people. Sandra Bullock's fans were particularly upset and criticized him on social media. Soon after, James complained about the harsh online reactions he received. His comment about cheating being part of life only made things worse. He even called himself the most hated man in the world, which seemed to satisfy Sandra Bullock's angry fans. James continued to complain online about how people enjoy seeing those at the top fall, comparing his situation to sadists who take pleasure in the downfall of famous people. James also talked about how 50 to 60 paparazzi once camped outside his house, bombarding him with questions. He tried to shift all the blame onto himself, saying he was just a messed-up kid from Long Beach who ended up married to America's sweetheart. He admitted that his feelings for Sandra were real, but said he made terrible mistakes. Meanwhile, Sandra Bullock moved on and found a love that few people experience in their lifetime. After her divorce, Sandra threw a birthday party for her son Louis in 2015. At the party, she met Brian Randall, a handsome photographer with gray hair. Brian was the kind of father figure Sandra wanted for her son. Although they never married, they quickly became a couple and took on the role of parents to Louis. Sadly, Brian was diagnosed with ALS, a disease that affects the nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord. Despite the challenges, Sandra and Brian were happy together and adopted a daughter. With Brian's older daughter from a previous relationship, they had 3 children in total. Brian passed away from ALS at the age of 57. In December 2021, Sandra Bullock appeared on Red Table Talk and shared that Brian Randall was the love of her life. She said, "He's a saint. He's evolved on a level that's not human." What do you think about Sandra Bullock's divorce from Jesse James and her finding true love later? Leave your thoughts in the comments, like, share, and subscribe for more videos.